guys, Ray Bashir here with Blue Shield Tactical Systems. Today I wanted to talk about the newest policy trends I'm seeing coming up with a lot of these agencies, and that is to give warnings to criminals before you shoot them in deadly force situations. I'm assuming these policies, and it would only make sense, that they would say when they would have the caveat in those that says when it is feasible to do so. So that really wouldn't change emergency situations, because that's mainly what officers are dealing with, right? They're not dealing with situations where, they have it to where they can plan it out to where I know I'm going to go in this house and this person's going to have a gun and they're going to have it down to their side and I know I'm going to be able to stand here and then I'm going to be able to tell them, hey, drop that gun, and they're going to drop that gun for me. Those are not the type of situations law enforcement goes into. It's not also the type of situations that even civilians find themselves in. When they have to make that decision, and there's ones that make the decision to use deadly force. It is a spur of the moment decision because there's a threat in front of you that has a firearm or a knife, and they're in close proximity, and they're wanting to use deadly force to harm you. So, to say that there needs to be a warning first, hopefully, it'll say something like, again, where it says it's feasible or not, to give that warning. It creates also, guys, hesitation by your officers to have that type of policy. So now there needs to be a lot of training that goes with that policy as well, right? Because those officers now are going to worry in their mind about losing their jobs if they don't give this person a warning before using deadly force. And it's just a bad policy, guys. It's a bad policy. And, creating that hesitation there by those officers to use deadly force in those emergency situations are going to get them hurt and killed. It's not a good plan. It is not a good plan. Not only that, criminal law doesn't say that officers have to do that, or a citizen has to give someone a warning before using deadly force. The criminal justice system understands that it's an emergency situation. But apparently, like I said, we have people, groups, special interest groups, or whatever it may be, some of these activists that are saying, the officers need to give warnings to these people before they shoot them. It's not like officers are going out here and shooting unarmed people. Does those circumstances happen? Of course they do. But it's when those people are attacking an officer. I tell you what your warning is when you see a person, a law enforcement officer in full uniform, and they are pointing a gun at you. Everyone, even if you don't even speak that language, understands that they're threatening you with deadly force. That's the reason they have a gun out, and that's the reason they have it pointed towards you. So even if I were in another country where they were pointing a gun at me and they were yelling at me in some foreign language I didn't understand, my hands would go up and I would drop to the ground. And if I had something in my hands, I would put it down immediately. I wouldn't even try to find myself in that situation to be hurt or killed by an officer. But that's not the type of situations that officers are dealing with, guys. You got to look at the statistics as well when it comes to law enforcement. Most of those situations are going to be where this other person had a threat of deadly force at the officer. The officer went around the corner, went into the home on a domestic. All of a sudden, someone raised a gun and pointed it at them. That doesn't allow the time for an officer to give a warning of deadly force, guys. It's just, I think that these decisions have been made based upon movies. You got people that are watching these movies that have never been in law enforcement, and now they're coming up with these harebrained ideas, right? Where they're saying, well, it's just like the movies where they're pointing gun. The bad guy's pointing a gun at the officer. Officer's pointing a gun at them, and they're moving around each other and going, no, you dropped the gun. No, you dropped the gun. Situations like that don't exist, guys. That's not what officers are dealing with. That's not what our military is dealing with either. If they're out there, they don't want to have if a combatant's over there on the other side with a gun, should our military personnel that's trying to kill them have to give them a warning first before killing this person who's trying to kill them? Does that make sense? Of course not. Some of the other things that are coming up is de-escalation training, which I'm a big believer in. I don't teach it personally, but we have instructors that do. and it's a great tool. I've used it. It works. I think training in general is great, but don't create policies like this, guys, that create hesitation by your officers. Because let me tell you something. We don't have an excessive force problem in law enforcement. We really don't. We have a failure to use force when we should. And how do I explain that? What I'm saying is because we didn't use force when we should at the first of that encounter, when we saw the resistance that was going to happen, when the person started pulling away from us, and we start trying to talk to them, or they're grabbing us, and we're, hey, don't do that, don't grab me, then it can lead to the officer being on the ground, fighting for their life now, and then they end up having to use deadly force. It's a bad situation, and there's a lot of hesitation. There's officers right now, I guarantee you guys, in this profession, that were being proactive, that are no longer being proactive. They see a situation before where they would have stopped off, they would have done something or tried, because that looked suspicious to them, they would stop and talk to the person, right? Or a person walked out from behind a building, they would have stopped and talked to them. They would have done those things. Does that still happen? Of course, yeah. There's still officers out there doing it. There's a lot of them that are not. I guarantee there's a lot that are not being proactive right now. They're not making traffic stops. They're not doing a lot of things, guys. It's because we, as a society, have hindered them at this point. They're afraid of losing their life, and they're afraid of losing their job, and they're afraid of going to prison now. They're afraid of being punished because there was an incident that come up that the community doesn't understand. I'm not even talking about the George Floyd case, but I'm saying another situation where the community doesn't understand what just happened, right? And they end up getting prosecuted. They end up possibly going to prison for it. Who would want that type of job? Can you imagine if we were telling our doctors, you have to do, look at the x-ray 3 times before you have it. I know you have somebody who's came into the hospital here with a gunshot wound, right? But you have to look over the x-ray 3 times here, and then you have to do these other procedures that we want you to do, before you remove the bullet. And the officer says, the doctor says, I don't have time to do all that. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not what we do. That's basically what we have now, guys. We have people that are not in law enforcement, that are not depending upon their leaders who they put into those positions to make those decisions that are best for the department and are best for the citizens as well. Can you imagine that an officer that has to give that warning and there's that delay that happens, the officer ends up getting shot and killed, and now this person is in a school because the officer's a school resource officer, and he goes through and he's killing kids because he didn't use force when he should have. He didn't address that emergency threat when he should have. Now, again, I'm hoping these policies that are going to come out that say that there needs to be a warning before deadly force is used, that there is some type of caveat about it being if it's feasible. Again, are there certain circumstances where that can happen, where I could see that happen in law enforcement? Yes, but those are very few. Very few. That would be a situation maybe where a person is 50 yards away from you, has a bat in their hand, and they're walking down the street, and the officers, obviously 50 yards from them, and they're yelling at them, drop the bat, I will shoot you if you come any closer. Drop the bat, I will shoot you if you come any closer. Then those are the type of circumstances, and guess what? Officers were already doing that. Officers were already telling these people, drop the bat, drop the bat. What do you think they were saying that for? They may not use the exact terminology, I will shoot you, and sometimes they did, but it's pretty self-evident when a police officer arrives on scene and they pull out a gun and you've got a weapon in your hand to drop the weapon. That would make sense to normal people, right? Guys, we got to be reasonable with these things. We got to be reasonable. And to create policies like that, it really, unless there's a lot of careful thought and training to go with it as well, because now just because you create a policy, you got to make sure that your officers are understanding that policy, where they don't feel in every circumstances when they don't have time to do that to give that warning. So hopefully there's some training that goes along with those policies. Guys, please be safe out there. I worry so much about my brothers and sisters in law enforcement, and it's tough times. And I don't know where we're headed as a nation. And frankly, I'm afraid of where we're headed as a nation. And so hopefully time will tell, and we'll all pull out better for this on the other side. But we shall see. Guys, be safe out there. Thanks. Bye.